The train lurched forward, the screech of metal on metal echoing through the carriage. Inside, a motley crew of commuters jostled for position, their faces a tapestry of boredom, exhaustion, and the ever-present anxiety of the daily grind. Amongst them sat James, a man whose broad shoulders hinted at a past spent in uniform. His eyes, the color of a stormy sea, held a quiet intensity, a reflection of the discipline instilled within him during his years of service. Across the aisle, a woman named Eleanor, her face flushed with a mixture of indignation and what she perceived as righteous fury, stared daggers at James. Her blonde hair, usually meticulously styled, was now a disheveled mess, a testament to the internal tempest raging within her. It had started innocuously enough, a stray backpack, a whispered apology, a curt dismissal. But then, something within Eleanor had snapped. "Excuse me," she'd barked, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Do you have any idea how much personal space means to a woman? You're practically breathing down my neck." James, startled by the sudden aggression, had simply replied, "I apologize, ma'am." I didn't mean to intrude, but his apology had only fueled Eleanor's anger. "Apology accepted?" she scoffed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I don't think so. Some people just don't understand boundaries." The other passengers, initially drawn in by the raised voices, now shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some averted their gaze, feigning disinterest, while others, fueled by a morbid curiosity, stole furtive glances at the unfolding drama. "Look," James said, his voice calm despite the rising tide of his own frustration. "I understand your concern. I'll try to give you more space." He shifted slightly in his seat, attempting to accommodate her invisible barrier. This minor concession, however, was met with a torrent of verbal abuse. "Try?" Eleanor sneered. "Try? Is that the best you can do? You think saying try makes it okay? You think I'm just some hysterical woman making a fuss? Well, let me tell you, I'm not." Her voice rose, gaining volume with each word, drawing the attention of the entire carriage. "You think just because you're some big, strong man," she hesitated, searching for the most offensive term, "some big, strong brute, that you can just do whatever you want? Well, I'm here to tell you, you're wrong." The word brute hung heavy in the air, a venomous barb aimed squarely at James's core. It evoked images of mindless aggression, of unchecked power, a stark contrast to the years he had dedicated to serving his country, to upholding the principles of honor and duty. A flicker of anger, a familiar heat rising in his chest, threatened to consume him. But James, remembering the countless hours spent mastering self-control, forced himself to remain calm. He took a deep breath, the rhythmic motion a grounding anchor in the storm of Eleanor's rage. "Ma'am," he said, his voice steady, "I understand that you're upset, but your words are hurtful. I have served this country. I have faced real danger, real threats. I have seen things that would curdle your blood. And yet, here I am, trying to have a peaceful commute, and I am being subjected to this unwarranted attack." His words, laced with a quiet dignity, seemed to deflate Eleanor slightly. The venom in her voice subsided, replaced by a mixture of shock and shame. She opened her mouth to speak, to apologize, but no words came out. The silence that followed was deafening. The other passengers, who had been observing the spectacle with a mixture of fascination and apprehension, now shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some exchanged nervous glances, while others, emboldened by the sudden lull, began to engage in hushed conversations, their voices a counterpoint to the lingering tension. Eleanor, defeated, slumped back in her seat, her gaze fixed on the floor. The flush of anger had receded, leaving behind a pale, sickly hue. She felt a knot of dread tightening in her stomach, a growing awareness of the magnitude of her outburst. James, his initial anger now replaced by a weary sadness, looked out the window, the passing landscape a blur of green and gray. He thought of the countless hours spent training, the physical and mental endurance required to serve his country. He thought of the sacrifices he had made, the comrades he had lost, and now here he was, reduced to this, a target of unwarranted aggression, his service, his sacrifice, seemingly forgotten. The train continued its journey, carrying its silent, uneasy cargo towards an uncertain destination. The incident, like a stain on an otherwise pristine canvas, threatened to linger, a constant reminder of the fragility of civility, the thin veneer of politeness that could so easily be shattered. As the train approached its final stop, James gathered his belongings and prepared to disembark. He glanced at Eleanor, who still sat frozen in her seat, her face a mask of regret. He felt a surge of pity, a fleeting understanding of the demons that had driven her to such a cruel outburst. But pity, he knew, was not enough. There were wounds that ran deeper than mere words, scars that would take years, perhaps a lifetime, to heal. And as he stepped off the train, leaving the incident behind, he wondered if true reconciliation was even possible, or if the echoes of that venomous outburst would forever haunt the quiet corners of his mind. Note: this story leaves the ending open-ended, allowing readers to contemplate the potential consequences of Eleanor's actions and the long-term impact on both her and James. It explores themes of racism, veterans' experiences, and the importance of self-control and empathy. This is just one possible interpretation of the scenario. The story can be further developed to explore the potential repercussions of Eleanor's outburst, such as facing disciplinary action at work, seeking therapy to address her anger issues, or even attempting to make amends with James. The ending can also be more ambiguous, leaving the reader to ponder whether Eleanor will ever truly understand the gravity of her actions, and whether James will ever be able to fully forgive her. The possibilities are endless, and the story can be adapted and expanded upon to suit the specific interests and preferences of the audience. The train doors hissed open, the rush of air and the cacophony of the station announcing James's escape from the suffocating atmosphere of the carriage. He stepped onto the platform, the vibrations of the departing train a distant tremor beneath his feet. The crisp autumn air, tinged with the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke, offered a welcome respite from the stifling tension that had permeated the carriage. He took a deep breath, the cool air filling his lungs, and began to walk, his pace deliberate, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Anger, frustration, and a deep-seated weariness battled for dominance. He had faced enemies on foreign soil, weathered storms of bullets and bombs, but the sting of Eleanor's words, the casual cruelty of her prejudice, cut deeper than any physical wound. He reached the end of the platform and paused, the city lights blurring into a shimmering haze in the distance. A stray dog, its fur matted and its ribs visible through its thin coat, approached him cautiously, its tail giving a tentative wag. James knelt down, offering the dog a piece of his lunch, a gesture of unexpected kindness. The dog, hesitant at first, cautiously sniffed the offered food, then devoured it with surprising ferocity. As it ate, James stroked its head gently, the rough fur a comforting tactile experience. The dog, sensing the warmth in his touch, leaned into his hand, its eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and a quiet desperation, mirroring the turmoil within James himself. He spent the next hour wandering through the quiet streets, the city lights a comforting counterpoint to the darkness that seemed to have settled within him. He stopped at a small cafe, the warmth of the interior a stark contrast to the chill of the evening air. He ordered a strong coffee, the rich aroma a welcome distraction from the intrusive thoughts that continued to plague him. As he sipped his coffee, he watched the stream of people passing by, students hurrying home, couples strolling hand in hand, a lone musician playing a melancholic tune on a battered violin. He observed their interactions, the fleeting moments of connection, the casual kindnesses, the shared laughter. And then he thought of Eleanor. He imagined her sitting alone on the train, the weight of her words finally sinking in. He imagined the shame, the regret, the gnawing fear of the unknown. He imagined the potential consequences of her outburst, the damage it could inflict on her reputation, her career, her relationships. A wave of unexpected sympathy washed over him. He understood, on some level, the forces that had driven her to such a cruel outburst, the societal pressures, the ingrained biases, the fear of the unknown. He understood that her words, while deeply hurtful, were perhaps a reflection of her own internal struggles, her own deep-seated insecurities. But understanding did not equate to forgiveness. The memory of her words, the venom in her voice, the casual cruelty of her prejudice continued to linger, a persistent ache in his chest. He knew that true healing would take time, perhaps a lifetime. He finished his coffee, the warmth fading from the cup, mirroring the diminishing warmth in his own heart. He paid his bill and stepped back into the crisp night air, the city lights a shimmering backdrop to his internal struggle. He decided to walk home, the physical exertion a welcome distraction from his troubled thoughts. As he walked, he replayed the events of the train ride in his mind, analyzing every word, every nuance, every inflection in Eleanor's voice. He tried to imagine the conversation from her perspective. He tried to understand the fear, the anger, the desperation that had fueled her outburst. He tried to empathize with her, to see the world through her eyes, to understand the forces that had shaped her worldview. But it was difficult. The weight of her words, the casual cruelty of her prejudice, continued to weigh heavily on his mind. He thought of the countless veterans who had returned from war, bearing the invisible scars of trauma, only to be met with indifference, suspicion, even outright hostility from the very society they had sworn to protect. He thought of the systemic racism that permeated every aspect of American society, the subtle and not-so-subtle biases that held back generations of Black Americans. He thought of the long, arduous struggle for equality, the countless sacrifices made in the pursuit of justice and freedom. And then he thought of his own journey. He thought of the years spent in uniform, the rigorous training, the unwavering discipline. He thought of the camaraderie, the shared experiences, the bonds of brotherhood forged in the crucible of war. He thought of the sacrifices he had made, the friends he had lost, the lives forever altered by the horrors of conflict. He thought of the pride he had felt serving his country, the belief that he was making a difference, that he was contributing to a better future for all. And then he thought of Eleanor's words. "You think just because you're some big, strong man." The words echoed in his mind, a venomous barb aimed squarely at his core. They stripped him of his identity, reduced him to a stereotype, a caricature. They negated his service, his sacrifice, his humanity. He felt a surge of anger, a familiar heat rising in his chest. But this time, it was a different kind of anger. It was not the anger of a man who had been wronged, but the anger of a man who had witnessed firsthand the corrosive effects of prejudice, the destructive power of hate. It was the anger of a man who had dedicated his life to serving his country, only to be met with disdain and disrespect. It was the anger of a man who refused to be defined by the words of a woman consumed by fear and prejudice. He continued to walk, the city lights blurring into a kaleidoscope of colors. The anger, like a simmering fire, continued to burn within him. But gradually as he walked, the intensity of the emotions began to subside, replaced by a quiet resolve. He would not let Eleanor's words define him. He would not allow her prejudice to erode his faith in humanity. He would continue to serve his community, to advocate for justice and equality, to be a beacon of hope in a world often shrouded in darkness. He reached his apartment building, the familiar glow of the entryway a welcome sight. He unlocked the door and stepped inside, the silence of the apartment a stark contrast to the cacophony of the city. He poured himself a glass of water, the cool liquid a soothing balm on his parched throat. He sat down on the couch, the soft cushions a comforting embrace. He closed his eyes, the events of the day replaying in his mind. He thought of Eleanor, of her words, of her fear, of her regret. And then he thought of the dog, its eyes filled with a quiet desperation, its trust a fragile, precious thing. He thought of the countless acts of kindness he had witnessed throughout his life, the small gestures of compassion that made the world a better place. He thought of the resilience of the human spirit, the capacity for love and forgiveness, the enduring power of hope. And slowly, tentatively, a sense of peace began to settle over him. He knew that the journey towards healing would be long and arduous. He knew that the scars of Eleanor's words would likely never fully fade. But he also knew that he was not alone. He had his friends, his family, his community. He had the memory of his service, the pride he felt in his accomplishments. He had the unwavering belief in a better future, a future where justice and equality would prevail. He took a deep breath, the tension finally beginning to ebb away. He had faced enemies on foreign soil, weathered storms of bullets and bombs. He had survived. He would survive this too. He would not let the words of one woman define him. He would not allow her prejudice to erode his faith in humanity. He would continue to fight for a better world, a world where everyone, regardless of race, religion, or background, would be treated with dignity and respect. He closed his eyes, the city lights a distant hum, the silence of the apartment a comforting embrace. He had a long way to go, but he knew, with a certainty that settled deep within his soul, that he would find his way. The next morning, James woke up to the sound of birdsong. He opened his eyes, the sunlight streaming through the window, and felt a sense of renewed purpose. He got out of bed, the stiffness in his muscles a reminder of the long walk home the previous night. He showered, shaved, and dressed, feeling a sense of calm he hadn't experienced in days. He made himself a cup of coffee, the rich aroma filling the small apartment. As he sipped his coffee, he read the morning news, his mind a quiet pool. He felt a sense of detachment, as if he were observing the world from a distance. He thought of Eleanor. He wondered what she was doing, how she was feeling. Was she consumed by guilt and regret? Was she seeking help, trying to understand the root of her anger? Or was she simply trying to move on, to forget the incident and pretend it never happened? He thought of the possibility of reaching out to her, of offering her an olive branch, a chance to understand, to reconcile. But the thought quickly dissipated. He knew that forgiveness was a complex, nuanced process. It was not something that could be demanded or expected. It was a gift, a testament to the strength of the human spirit, a recognition of our shared humanity. And he was not ready to offer that gift. He decided to focus on himself, on healing the wounds inflicted by Eleanor's words. He spent the next few days immersing himself in his hobbies, reading, writing, playing music. He volunteered at a local veterans center, helping other veterans navigate the challenges of reintegrating into civilian life. He found solace in the company of his friends, in the shared laughter, the comforting silence, the unwavering support. He reconnected with his family, spending time with his parents, his siblings, his nieces and nephews. He rediscovered the joys of simple pleasures, the warmth of the sun on his face, the taste of freshly brewed coffee, the beauty of a sunrise. He began to appreciate the small moments, the fleeting instances of beauty and grace that existed in the everyday. He also began to engage in acts of kindness, however small. He helped an elderly woman carry her groceries. He donated to a local charity. He offered a helping hand to a stranger in need. He found that these small acts of kindness, these gestures of empathy and compassion, brought him a sense of peace and fulfillment that he had not experienced in a long time. He continued to reflect on the events of the train ride, analyzing his own reactions, his own biases, his own shortcomings. He acknowledged his own anger, his own frustration, his own prejudices. He realized that he was not immune to the biases that permeated society. He realized that he had his own blind spots, his own unconscious biases that influenced his perceptions and shaped his worldview. He began to challenge his own assumptions, to question his own beliefs. He sought out diverse perspectives, engaged in meaningful conversations, and actively sought to understand the experiences of others. He joined a support group for veterans, sharing his experiences with others who had faced similar challenges. He listened to their stories, offered his support, and found solace in the shared experiences, the shared struggles, the shared triumphs. He discovered that he was not alone in his struggles. He was part of a larger community, a community of individuals who had faced adversity, who had overcome challenges, who had found strength in their shared experiences. He began to feel a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. He felt connected to something larger than himself, to a community of individuals who were striving to make a difference, to create a more just and equitable world. Months turned into years. The incident on the train became a distant memory, a faded scar on the landscape of his life. He continued to work on himself, to challenge his own biases, to strive for personal growth and self-improvement. He continued to advocate for veterans' rights, to fight for social justice, to be a voice for the voiceless. He met someone new, a woman named Sarah, a kind, compassionate woman who saw the best in him, who accepted him for who he was, flaws and all. They fell in love, their relationship a testament to the enduring power of love, forgiveness, and human connection. They married, and a few years later, they welcomed a child into the world, a beautiful baby girl with eyes the color of the summer sky. James watched his daughter grow, her laughter filling the house with joy, her curiosity a constant source of wonder. He watched her interact with the world, her eyes wide with wonder, her mind open to new experiences. He thought of Eleanor, and he wondered what had become of her. He hoped that she had found peace, that she had learned from her mistakes, that she had grown as a person. He hoped that she had found a way to forgive herself, to heal the wounds inflicted by her own anger and prejudice. He knew that forgiveness was not easy. It was a long, arduous journey, a constant struggle against the forces of anger, resentment, and bitterness. But he also knew that forgiveness was possible. He had found forgiveness within himself, forgiveness for the anger that had consumed him, for the prejudices that had clouded his judgment. He had learned that forgiveness was not about condoning the actions of others, but about releasing oneself from the grip of anger and resentment. It was about recognizing our shared humanity, our shared vulnerabilities, our shared capacity for both good and evil. He looked at his daughter, her eyes sparkling with curiosity, and he felt a surge of love, a profound sense of gratitude. He realized that the greatest gift he could give his daughter was not material wealth or worldly possessions, but the gift of empathy, the gift of compassion, the gift of forgiveness. He would teach her the importance of kindness, the power of love, the enduring strength of the human spirit. He would teach her to see the world through the eyes of others, to understand their struggles, to embrace their differences. He would teach her the importance of forgiveness, not just for others, but for herself. He knew that the journey towards a more just and equitable world would be long and arduous. He knew that there would be setbacks, disappointments, and moments of despair. But he also knew that the fight for justice was worth it. He knew that the seeds of change were being sown, that a new generation was rising up, a generation inspired by hope, fueled by compassion, driven by the unwavering belief in a better future. He looked at his daughter, her eyes reflecting the light of the setting sun, and he felt a surge of hope, a renewed sense of purpose. The future, he knew, would be shaped by the choices we make today, by the values we uphold, by the actions we take. He would continue to strive for a world where everyone, regardless of race, religion, or background, would be treated with dignity and respect. He would continue to fight for a world where love would conquer hate, where compassion would triumph over indifference, where forgiveness would heal the wounds of the past. He would continue to believe in the inherent goodness of humanity, in the enduring power of hope, in the possibility of a better tomorrow. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape, he knew that he was not alone. He was part of something larger, something more significant. He was part of a movement, a collective effort to create a world where love would prevail, where justice would be served, and where the human spirit would forever soar. And in that moment, as the twilight deepened, he felt a profound sense of peace, a quiet assurance that the journey, though long and arduous, would ultimately lead to a brighter future, a future filled with hope, healing, and the enduring power of love.